Here with another episode of Sweet Jesus. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is sweeter. We didn't get the ice cream.
Oh, it's okay. We'll have to have it later, I
Hey,
guess.
Hope, get us a couple of Haagen-Dazs bars. Hey, Hope, you hear us? Yeah. Get us a couple of Haagen-Dazs bars. We're live, by the way. Yeah, so we're gonna have some Haagen-Dazs bars. Somebody had a birthday recently,
Yeah.
so we got to celebrate a little bit late. Happy birthday, happy belated.
Thank you.
We're here in the Open Arms Podcast Studio, and of course, don't forget about these wonderful publications here to help support us. Like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff. But we are here to talk about the parables of Jesus. This better be good because we've been talking about this for like 3 months.
Has it been that long?
Like, what should we talk about next? Yes, thank you. Haagen-Dazs bars. So, y'all, hey, grab yourself a dessert, a brownie, a cookie, a cupcake, cheesecake, bread pudding, whatever, and pull up a chair, take a bite of something sweet. And remember Psalm 34:8. Taste and see that the Lord is good. Ice cream is sweet, but Jesus is sweeter. So we finished up with Jordan Peterson, and then we
Went through some holiday stuff.
got the holidays. We did the laughing, Jesus and laughter, and all that kind of stuff, which we could probably talk more about. Actually, came up recent at the convention. Somebody said something about laughing, and I was like, "Oh, I know for sure we're going to be laughing in heaven because the Sermon on the Plain, Luke 6, he says, you know, blessed are those who mourn, for they will laugh." So we're going to laugh one day.
Okay.
But anyway, who knew that would be helpful on the fly? Those bizarre things. But I think it was Isaiah 6. I read at some point, we did church on Sunday, the lectionary readings included Isaiah 6. And Isaiah chapter 6 is this encounter with God. And he's like, who's going to go? Who shall I send? Who will go for us? Here I am, Lord, send me. And then he tells him, you know, what to do. And it's not great. He says, and I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And then I said, here am I, send me. And he said, go and say to this people. This is now God talking to Isaiah. Keep on hearing, but do not understand. Keep on seeing, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people dull, and their ears heavy, and blind their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Huh?
Yeah, it sounds like he's pulling against the people.
Yeah, keep going until nobody understands. And the connection is that in Matthew 13, we get a number of parables of Jesus. There are parables in other Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and also other chapters within Matthew. But Jesus starts out with this parable of the sower in Matthew 13, and then after he tells the parable, it says, the disciples came and said to him, why do you speak to them in parables? And what do most people say? Most people say, oh, Jesus was just a man of the people, and he talked in parables so they would understand, blah, 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 blah. Anybody that's ever said that to you has not read the Bible. They just haven't actually read, at least not all of the Bible.
Or they didn't necessarily understand what they read, which is the truth in my case a lot of times.
Well, I think this is pretty obvious, right? Because then after that it says, and he answered them, to you it has been given to know the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but to them it has not been given. For to the one who has, more will be given, and he will have an abundance. But from the one who has not, even what he has will be taken away. This is why I speak to them in parables, right? So pretty straightforward. Jesus is saying, he's answering that question. Why does Jesus teach in parables? He says, this is why I speak in parables. Because seeing they do not see, and hearing they do not hear, nor do they understand. Indeed, in their case, the prophecy of Isaiah is fulfilled that says, and he's quoting Isaiah now, you will indeed hear, but never understand, and you will indeed see, but never perceive. For this people's heart has grown dull, and with their ears they can barely hear, and their eyes they have closed, lest they should see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and turn, and I would heal them. But blessed are your eyes, for they see, and your ears, for they hear. For truly I say to you, many prophets and righteous people longed to see what you see and did not see, and to hear what you hear and did not hear. So, Jesus doesn't want people to understand?
Well, even more, I don't know, worse or whatever, more than that. In Isaiah, it's like almost like God is saying, nope, they won't understand, or I'm not going to let them understand. That's kind of what it sounds like. But
And he even goes on, then how long, O Lord? So I say, how long am I supposed to do this? And he said, until cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without people, and the land is a desolate waste, and the Lord removes people far away, and the forsaken places are many in the midst of the land. And though a tenth remain in it, it will be burned again, like a terebinth or an oak whose stump remains when it is felled. The holy seed is its stump.
so is this like prophetic to the time after the temple falls and the Jewish people are dispersed around the globe or whatever, however that was?
There is judgment coming. Yeah.
Is that this particular time, or do you think it's referring, because it is the time when, I mean, it's referred to when Jesus was there. So I didn't know if it was specifically for that time or just in general.
It's
when people don't see what they're supposed to see or hear what they're supposed to hear, then these are the things that happen to them.
Isaiah is prophesying about the future judgment of God that is going to come. And I think it's like the Assyrians are threatening, and then that's not how it eventually happens. But then Babylon, he's like, don't worry, it's not them. I'm sending Babylon. Like, it's something like that. It's going to be worse,
Just this is the warm up, huh?
Yeah, and so it's very much connected to that very difficult time in Israel's history, the exile, and actually Isaiah is kind of divided up into. It depends on who you ask, but there's at least sort of these two parts where all before chapter 40, it's kind of like, watch out, like it's coming.
Mm-hmm.
You guys have been bad. And then chapter 40 is where you get comfort my people. You get the prophecy of John the Baptist, a voice in the wilderness, make way, a straight path for the Lord. So there's all of that going on, but he's not going to let it happen forever. That is the context for sure of Isaiah 6 and some of that harsh language. But Jesus then applies it to himself. So yes, the context is such, but he's now saying that, well, this is the way God works. He talks in funny ways that people scratch their head and go. And actually, near the end of the video you sent me, so there was a video, Jordan Peterson and his Bible scholar people that are looking at different parts of the Bible, the Gospels in particular. And there was one guy near the end who I think was kind of getting somewhere. He said something about, like, I think he's the guy who, like, doesn't believe anything.
Mm.
He's got the glasses, the kind of beard, shortish hair, maybe balding-ish in the back or something. But like this parable, it has like this concealed thing that's only meant to reach certain people, or I forget exactly how he described, but I was like, oh, I think he's getting there. And then our food was ready, so I turned off the video.
Okay.
That's basically what happened. I don't know. What are your thoughts so far?
Okay, so I was wanting just this part in Isaiah. Where he says, about basically they'll keep on hearing but do not understand, keep on seeing. But he says, then he said, here I am snowing. So make the heart of the people, their eyes heavy and and blind their eyes. Like, in other words, it's almost like God's doing this to these people so that they won't see and they won't understand and their minds will become dull. And then it kind of reminded me of, in I guess it's in Exodus, or where the Pharaoh's there and it says God will harden his heart. And it's like, well, it kind of almost makes at that point too, when I read it, that it's like, well, it sounds like God is really like setting up the Pharaoh to, he might have been kind of evil to begin with, but he's kind of even like upping him up, give him a little more power to be even more evil or whatever. But so it's like, is that the same thing that's going on here? And then, but I had read another interpretation of that where he didn't really, or this one interpretation said he didn't really, like with the Pharaoh, he didn't really make, kind of set up the Pharaoh to be against Moses. He basically just let the Pharaoh be more full of himself. Like, he was this way already. He's like, I'm going to harden his heart, meaning I'm going to almost like strengthening his heart to make him feel like no fear at all. He's the Pharaoh and he can do and say what he wants to do. So I was wondering if there's some interpretation here or some translation that would maybe make it seem like that. In other words, the people are like that, and God's just saying, okay, well, we're just going to let them be like that. I'm just going to, instead of keep trying to convince them to not be like that, I'm just going to let them go completely. And then they will not hear, they will not see. I don't know. Does that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yeah, I think I get where you're trying to go with this. And I do think there is some connection to this idea of Pharaoh. So this is just Exodus 9. It happens on multiple occasions where it says the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, and he did not listen to them as the Lord had spoken to Moses. So God's kind of predicting this. I think it's more like you were saying, where he's kind of allowing him to be confirmed in his unbelief. The Bible does say that God takes no pleasure in the death of the wicked, but that the wicked turn from his way and live. So he's not doing anything beyond what Pharaoh actually wants. So he may be helping him along at that point, but Pharaoh's made up his mind about this. And so have the people of Isaiah's day. And that's how they get to the judgment that he is going to predict.
Because in Matthew, it kind of changes the meaning just a little bit, at least from my understanding, is that basically that's it. The people are like this. Mm-hmm. They're kind of dull at this point. They're not seeing, they're not hearing.
Well, I think
it's more on the people,
I think when we get to the Gospels, it is more like what you're saying, in the sense that this is sort of how people are. Mm-hmm. And this is what the guy was saying. And I wish I listened to the whole thing and took some notes. But he's talking about how there's this like truth at the heart of the story, but it's a concealed truth because it is so, I don't know if the right word is offensive, or so contrary to the way, the paradigm of the culture and society of the time, and maybe all human society, really. I mean, I do think Jesus kind of flips so many things on its head. The only reason today it doesn't seem weird in our culture to emphasize some of the things that Jesus talks about, is because we're basically living in a culture that was built upon these ideas. But a parable had this hidden message because you couldn't take it head on. Like there are certain times, there are certain people, there are certain situations where if you come right at them, they will do exactly what we're talking about, what we just read. Like they will not hear, they will not see, they will not believe, they will not change, they will not turn. Kids can be like this. Our kids.
Yeah, the political situation is either side.
Politics.
You come at anybody on either side with something that doesn't fit the model, man, and they just guilty of myself. But
there's a massive amount of brainwashing. We just are conditioned to see and hear and understand certain things, and then you try and talk to somebody who's so entrenched in one way of thinking or the other. If you're not 100%, now you're the enemy. And no, it can't be that. It's got to be a lie. Although there's been a lot of lying.
Yeah.
I
remember there's lying on both sides. I'm trying to tell myself that, but
yeah. So you have to hide this truth, basically, is kind of where this guy was going. And I think that's fair. I think that's a fair assessment of what's happening here. I also think that, Jesus is explaining this to the disciples who came to him and followed up. So it's almost like the intention is no one's going to understand this. It's so contrary to the way they understand the world that they're just going to scratch their head and be like, what? What's the point? Why did you say this? Why does it matter? How is that good? And that's the point. It's the engaging in conversation, in dialogue with God in the flesh in Jesus. It's more, I think, about the person of Jesus. Like, all right, Jesus, I don't get this. Explain it to me. And it's that dialogue, it's that back and forth, it's that ongoing relationship that is really what he's looking for. Because people still don't fully get this. And that, all of them, I think, kind of agreed that we don't know what this is.
Yeah, they didn't get it either. But I guess what you're saying is that at least they came and asked. Mm-hmm. So they were interested in why are you saying this? Whereas the other people heard it, this is nonsense or whatever.
This guy's crazy.
Yeah, and then they're not even seeking it out, I guess.
Mm-hmm. But then even the disciples don't fully get it. And honestly, even we, I think, we can pick apart these parables endlessly.
Right.
And people are still kind of shaking their head and like, oh, is this what it is? Is that what it is? And
yeah.
So there's this endless amount of material to work with and ponder and meditate on, which again, I think supports what I'm trying to say, which is that's the point. The point is that you sit in it for a while. I do think there's more direct kinds of things that are there, but I think it's only when we approach it with the idea that it's not supposed to make sense. It's supposed to flip everything you think on its head, which is the exact opposite of what I've almost always heard people say about parables. Oh, Jesus was just such a man of the people, and he was just such a good communicator that he used these fun little stories to explain things. Everybody that heard those stories walked away scratching their head. No, that's not it.
Well,
so this first parable is the parable of the sower. That same day, Jesus went out of the house, sat beside the sea. The great crowds gathered about him, so that he got into a boat and sat down, and the whole crowd stood on the beach. And he told them many things in parables, saying, A sower went out to sow, and as he sowed, some seed fell along the path, and the birds came and devoured them. Other seeds fell on rocky ground, where they did not have much soil, and immediately when the sun rose, they were scorched. And since they had no root, they withered away. Other seeds fell among thorns, and the thorns grew up and choked them. Other seeds fell on good soil and produced grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. He who has ears, let him hear. And then the part that we already kind of read, disciples come to him, say, what? And he's like, oh, so they don't understand. But then he actually explains it. Hear then the parable of the sower. When anyone hears the word of the kingdom and does not understand it, the evil one comes and snatches away what has been sown in his heart. This is what was sown along the path. As for what was sown on rocky ground, this is the one who hears the word and immediately receives it with joy. Yet he has no root in himself, but endures for a while, and when tribulation or persecution arises on account of the word, immediately he falls away. As for what was sown among thorns, this is the one who hears the word. But the cares of the world and the deceitfulness of riches choke the word, and it proves unfruitful. As for what was sown on good soil, this is the one who hears the word and understands it. He indeed bears fruit and yields in one case 100-fold, in another 60, and in another 30. So, I think a lot of people will say, oh, well, see, it's about being the kind of soil.
Right.
Is it, though? Because he's just saying this is about the sower. And who's the sower?
Well, you would think Jesus is the sower.
Exactly. Jesus is the sower. So, and most of these are really about God. The parables are trying to communicate something about God and the way God works, not so much the way he wants us to work, although I do think there's that too. But can you be good soil necessarily? Like, obviously you want to be open to it. You don't want to let the deceitfulness of the world and persecution drive you away. But I think people are looking at him and wondering what the heck he's doing. And he is just out sowing seed. He's just all over the place. Is that how you sow seed?
Generally not.
Yeah, no, exactly.
You try to be a little more precise and specific.
You say, hey, okay, I'm not going to do it over there. Like, why should there be seed accidentally falling on a path? You're a terrible farmer. Like, you're a maximum idiocy kind of zone, right? Like, what? You find the right place, the right field, you rotate crops, you prepare the ground, you pick out the rocks, you get the plow through there, make nice little rows, and then you get seed every so far, right? A certain amount of distance, and then you cover it back up and you take good care of it. Like, you don't say to the soil, hey, be good soil, right? You say, don't be an idiot, farmer. Do it right. Do it well. And yet here's this sower who's just throwing stuff everywhere. And it's probably got something to do with people looking at him going, what are you doing? Like, what is happening? And where are you going? And why are you talking to all these different people? And right. So he's saying that the seed just is everywhere. Every opportunity to sow, you sow. Not, oh, let's make it perfect and everything. You just put the seed out there. You keep casting the seed. You just throw it and throw it and throw it. And yeah, some of it's going to go here. Some of it's going to go there. But the emphasis is on the sowing of the seed, the casting of the seed out. Anywhere and everywhere. And some of it's going to be terrible for that very reason. But some of it's going to be amazing. And stop thinking about where you're sowing seed. Just put it out there, right? This is what the sower is doing. This is what we're eventually going to do.
Well, it's kind of like fishing, right? You if you watch like these bass fishermen, right? They travel around in their boat and they're casting in the fish is going to be right there by that log, by the bank, whatever. Yeah, sure enough, they'll catch a fish, but then they'll catch, some nice fish. But if you really wanted to catch a lot of fish, you take out the net, right? And you throw it out there and you pull it in, and you're going to get a net full of fish, not just one at a time kind of thing. Maybe it's something like that. He's giving everybody an opportunity.
Yeah.
No matter where you live or whatever circumstances you're in. I mean, I imagine the place where the thorns and all that are growing. You can imagine that being a place that's not a great place to live, right? But he's still tossing some there, and there may be one or two sprouts that still make it through that don't quite get choked out, right? And maybe even on the hardened path, there could be one that falls into the crack that gets enough water. I mean, I got grass growing out of the cracks in my sidewalk. It seems to be more hardy than the stuff that's in the yard sometimes. So
maybe,
so you got to give them all a chance. Is that what he's doing, you think? Giving it just by casting it everywhere and all the different types of places, he's not picking and choosing? Because then you could say, well, because one of the big complaints, or I don't know, complaint's the right word, but people say, well, what about, everybody's worried about dying and going to hell, right? How can God send people to hell? These people over here in this far off place have never heard about God before. So how can they be a believer if they've never heard the word or know anything about God? So he's throwing it. He's throwing it. You're going to get the opportunity. It's going to get planted. Somehow something's going to get there.
Yeah, we don't know the answer to that question. I think, Jesus is pretty clear. I am the way, the truth, and the life. If they make it, it's because of Jesus. It's through Jesus, period. Like, there's no other way. But I do think there are parts of the world where we may believe that they didn't hear the gospel, but maybe they did.
Mm-hmm.
You look at the Middle East today, you look at Africa today, North Africa, you look at India and China and Asia, right? All over Asia. We act like, oh, hey, they don't have the gospel in some of these places, right? We got to get it to them.
Some of them had it longer
than
us.
They did have it.
Longer than we did.
They did, and longer than us. And there are, in some of those places, there are small remnants of those early Christian communities, although sadly not nearly as many areas have persevered or survived. So it's very possible that some of the things that we think are like, oh, well, they never heard it, he's got to be right. Well, no, their ancestors screwed it up for them somehow. Or just the natural course of history and the terrible things that just
persecution.
All sorts of things that I don't think we can easily say that, oh, there's all these people that have just never heard, so God should be gentle and everything. I think God is a loving and merciful God, and I think he's given appropriate opportunities and will give the appropriate opportunities. I'm not bothered by that too much.
But just if Jesus was just sprinkling his seed in the Israel area, and then maybe into Europe or whatever you'd want to think, those are all the great areas to sow. Then the other areas would be so it'd be like he's picking and choosing.
Yeah,
and I don't, like you said, that's not
He's going everywhere. He wants anybody and everybody. Yeah.
I was listening to one of the videos, and one of the guys explained that back in the day, the way they surveyed the land, they used, like for farming, it was like, okay, they used landmarks. Okay, this big rock here, you'll buy from this big rock to that big tree, and then this big rock to the creek or whatever, and then that is your land kind of thing. And he said there weren't necessarily roads, but there were paths that people took, and that these paths, they didn't want everybody just cutting through the middle where they're going to be planting, so they were usually on the edges, around the edges, and those would become the quote hard spots, right? Because a cart might be going over it constantly, you know, so you have a trail and it's harder. And, you know, so, you know, maybe back then they didn't have, you know, mechanical, you know,
You had to break it up and
break it up and all that. It was much more work. So, and then the way they spread the seeds and stuff like that. So maybe some of them, you know, the farmers or whatever at the time was hearing this and maybe could understand it. And then he said that, you know, so some of this on the edges, you might have the thorns and those kind of weeds and stuff growing. And so, yes, some of the seed did fall in there. So it was maybe kind of making sense from that perspective. But he said at the end where they talked about the different multiples, you know, and this will have this and this will have, you know, he said, and I wish I could tell you exactly, but it was like the yield is what he's talking. And in a farmer's perspective, if that was really just crops that he was planting, those different yields that were coming out of there when he said, yeah, this many and this many and a little bit lesser amount, those, even the smaller amounts are tremendous yields for a farmer. It's like the first one was like a yield of like 3,000 times.
Yeah.
You know, so it's like, you know, it's just, I don't know. Anyway, just, I thought it was interesting because.
Well, where it takes root, yeah.
Yeah, where it takes root, it grows better, but the yields are just amazing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's just amazing. So.
Yeah, this is the way it works. Like, we don't necessarily have to understand it all, but he just communicated. He throws it everywhere. He gives everybody the opportunity. It doesn't always take for a variety of reasons, but when it takes, 100-fold, 60-fold, 30-fold, it justifies the method, I think maybe is kind of. So you guys, this doesn't make sense to you, but that's okay. It doesn't have to. It makes sense to me because I'm the Son of God. But I think that's helpful because, you know, we get stuck sometimes when we're thinking about evangelism, trying to reach people with the good news. We have so many difficulties, right? Mm-hmm. And we do cast seed all over the place at times, and we don't see results. I think some of that is we're just not supposed to see them. It's going to take a while, and we're just one piece in a long series of people that are going to be a part of this process for each person. But just trust the process, plant seeds, and it will take root at some point. That just like Jesus, he did this. It looked crazy. It didn't make any sense to anybody, and yet here we are today, 2,000 years later, talking about Jesus and the things that he said and did. So I think it justifies the methods. You know.
Well, when you think the story with the woman at the well, right? So that wasn't even the disciples questioning why he was talking to the woman at the well. So he was tossing some seeds in an area like, why are we even talking to these people? We don't even deal with these people, you know.
Yeah, we could have gone around some area. Why are we here?
Yeah, Jesus was sowing, and then she went back and told everybody in the town. So what was the yield, or what was the?
Sounds like the whole village. How many people in the village? 100 people? Probably more. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Man. Well.
And then even there's the other parable, right, where he plants the seed, and then somebody comes and there's the crop and the weeds were together.
Oh man, we're gonna jump parables now?
No, we don't have to jump parables too much, but you know, I just keep thinking about those poor seeds on the edge. You know, they're having a tough life. Are they gonna get to be get there? You know, and it's like, well, yeah, you know, because the angels are gonna come through and The bad stuff is going to go one way and the good stuff is going to go the other way. So you got to.
Yeah, well, I mean, we can read it. There's plenty of other parables.
Yeah, I didn't know if you were focusing on. I didn't read too much of that, but I did. That one came to mind when I was just because it was about planting seeds and things growing and that type of thing. But
I do think that these are more about God, although there are implications for us, right? This is how the kingdom of God works, and it's a concealed, sort of hidden idea because it's so counterintuitive, revolutionary, right? And that's this next one, the parable of the weeds. He put another parable before them, saying, "The kingdom of heaven may be compared to a man who sowed good seed in his field, but while his men were sleeping, his enemy came and sowed weeds among the wheat and went away. So when the plants came up and bore grain, then the weeds appeared also. And the servants of the master of the house came and said to him, 'Master, did you not sow good seed in your field? How then does it have weeds?' He said to them, 'An enemy has done this.' So the servants said to him, 'Then do you want us to go and gather them?' But he said, 'No, lest in gathering the weeds you root up the wheat along with them. Let both grow together until the harvest, and at harvest time I will tell the reapers, gather the weeds first and bind them in bundles to be burned, but gather the wheat into my barn.'" And actually, he explains it, but it's a bit later. There's actually several more verses in between here. And he says, he left the crowds, went to the house, disciples came to him again, right? So, like, once again, it's like, what is that about? He answered, "The one who sows the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world, and the good seed is the sons of the kingdom. The weeds are the sons of the evil one, and the enemy who sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the close of the age, and the reapers are angels. Just as the weeds are gathered and burned with fire, so will it be at the close of the age. The Son of Man will send his angels, and they will gather out of his kingdom all causes of sin and all lawbreakers, and throw them into the fiery furnace. In that place there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then the righteous will shine like the sun in the kingdom of their Father. He who has ears, let him hear." So he doesn't even explain, once again, like, he doesn't really explain it. Like, he gives you a good outline, and he gives you what some of these things symbolize, what they're meant to point to. But in the end, we still have to go back now to the parable of the weeds and go, okay, so what the heck does that mean? And again, it's this sitting in it and simmering in it. And I actually had an interesting conversation yesterday. There were these people at our district convention, right? There are pastors, a lot of non-pastors. So, like, should have been half and half about. Probably a few more clergy than non-clergy, but pretty close. And there are these lay people, non-clergy, talking about, oh, Bible studies. Yeah, great Bible studies when you only go a few verses. And I'm like, man, you know how many times I've gotten grief because people want to, like, get through stuff? I was like, I love hearing that. I mean, then if you think back to when we were doing Bible studies, we took a long time to get through stuff. And they were like, oh, no, yeah, if you only get a few words even, like, if you just squeeze every little bit out that you can. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what the Bible is inviting us to do. I think we should sit in it. We should meditate on it. We should kick it around in our brain. I think that's of far more value than just being able to check off, like, we finished a chapter.
Yeah.
If it takes you 6 weeks to finish a chapter, so what? It's not about the checklist. It's about what you're squeezing out of it. And are you even getting it, right? Because some of this stuff is so bizarre. So what is this weed and wheat thing about? Well, he said the devil is the one who puts the wheat, the weeds there. The Son of Man is put the wheat, the good seed, The close of the age is the harvest. The reapers are angels. Now we go back and we go, okay, so there's these two things coming up at the same time. They look kind of alike. And the reason why they look alike is he says don't tear it up. Don't pull out the bad stuff because you might pull up the good stuff. And that's got to be somewhat because they look alike. It could also be because they're just so intertwined. Like if you pull something up out of the ground, like by its roots, if you can get it there, it's connected. The roots become all intertwined. So even if you do select the correct one, the effort of trying to yank it out, the bad stuff out, actually pulls up the good stuff too. And I've seen this plenty of times when you try and fight a battle in a congregation in ministry with somebody who's bad, like obviously so, need to be corrected and dealt with. Tough situations, tough decisions. But that process, when not done in God's timing, pulls up good stuff.
Right.
There's collateral damage. So I think Jesus is calling us to patience on many fronts, but particularly it's not up to us who's in and out. He just said we are not going to know. We're not going to be able to figure this out. So let the angels figure it out at the end. They're going to do it right. And if they yank up a weed and it pulls a little bit on some actual wheat, it's the moment. It's the end. And so maybe they can be salvaged still. They're not going to die there laying half in and half out of the ground. Right, because it's now the time. Now is the harvest. It's happening. So you yank it, they get out.
There's no tomorrow.
There is no tomorrow. Apollo Creed.
Yeah,
that's on the back of one of my kids' swim team shirts. Their state meet. They put these famous quotes. Usually people who died recently. Carl Weathers died, so they had Apollo Creed.
Did you know Carl Weathers grew up in New Orleans? He went to St. Augustine.
I think
the Purple Knights, the one that has the band, the Marching 100.
Same one as
1000 or whatever it is, yeah.
Jackie Wallace was at that one, St. Aug. I think I learned it when he died.
Oh, okay.
So I think I read about it.
I didn't yet.
Man. Yeah.
I knew of course, we all knew of Carl Weathers way before that. And then I just learned about it recently too. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, local connection. What does that have to do with the weeds and the wheat?
Well, I had a thought when you were saying that, and it was kind of like with what you said, but we had this discussion a few weeks ago in the men's Bible study, and it was a small group that night, so we were going off on all kind of tangents or whatever, so that's fine. And somebody brought up the fact that, well, what about the people that don't go to church? They still believe in God, blah, 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 blah. So we kind of went down that road and we're talking about that. And it's like they stopped going to church because they were at a church, and then the church, the pastor in this case, had taught on something or give a sermon on something. And basically, if this group of people that does this thing, they're going to hell.
Mm-hmm.
And that upset, the friend or whatever. And because they might have known somebody that did this thing or whatever that this pastor was preaching against. So this person goes, well, I'm done with this church. And pretty much done with going to church at all for the moment. I don't know, forever, hopefully not. But so that made me think of that. Even a pastor, I guess, or whoever this person was that was given the sermon, he was trying to yank out something, and when he did that, he pulled out 2 or 3 other people that So anyway,
it's a combination of things. I think people today really don't want to hear how they are not awesome and amazing and perfect and wonderful. So they have a hard time hearing it. Again, why parables? Hide it in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you draw it out, right? Nathan did that to David, right? He tells the story about sheep. He doesn't come right at him, and he gets David all riled up about it, and then he's like, "Oh, you are the man." Dagger through the heart, like he just it's the way it surprises you, right? That's how it gets you. It has to surprise you almost because you have your defenses up.
Oh yeah, if it's coming right at you, the first thing you do is defend yourself. We
are by nature self-righteous, and we try to justify ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you have an inkling, you got your dander up and you're ready to resist and justify and explain. But if you don't have time for that, because it just, soothes you. Oh, this is an interesting story. Oh, man, what kind of jerk would do that? Oh, it's you. Boom, right? So there is some sense in which there are hard messages that people should hear. But I do believe that in the American church, American Christianity, there are a lot of people that emphasize good and bad, good and evil, right and wrong, and they make very clear distinctions. And I think they actually are forgetting what really gets us in. What gets us in is not being perfect little stalks of wheat.
Mm-hmm.
There is no such thing. The only such person was Jesus, and they killed him anyway. Like he still died.
Mm-hmm.
So when you go after something like, oh, anybody who does this, that's not even demonstrating the faintest grasp of the grace of God in Jesus and the full payment and full forgiveness of all sin in and through the blood of the sinless Savior of the world. Like, it's not our sin that actually keeps us in or out. It's not whether we have it or don't have it. We all have it. There's no denying that. Some of us are maybe doing a little bit better than others, but in the end, we are all guilty.
Mm-hmm.
The Bible's pretty clear about that. So if we're all guilty, then why are we ranting and raving about certain things and not about other things? There are plenty of passages that do say some really hard things. But what I always say is nobody gets out of those passages.
Right.
Like, there are all kinds of lists in Scripture. Nobody survives the lists. Nobody.
Right.
And so if you don't approach it from that perspective, it should probably get people upset. Like, whoa. Wait a second. You want me to start nitpicking you? Because I'm sure I could figure out where your weak spots are. And I'm sure I could find a Bible verse that would help me justify keeping you out. But I don't think that's what Jesus wanted us to be about. He doesn't want us to figure out who's in and out. It's not up to us. It's the angels at the end are going to obey the command of the Father, and they're going to decide. And I think we will all be very surprised. We'll be surprised who's in and surprised who's out, if we can be surprised at all.
Right.
'Cause are we just going to enjoy this? Like, it's bliss, and I'm unable to remember anything that is going to be painful.
Right. Right.
So,
yeah, as somebody said, they always tell you about you standing in front of St. Peter in front of the pearly gates, and why do we let you in? Why should I let you in?
Yeah,
let you in, and if you start out by saying I,
mm-hmm.
you're out. You got to say Jesus, otherwise, there's no I. There's not enough I's you can say that will get you there. Yeah, I was like, yeah, that's a simple, easy way to get that. So
yeah,
for me anyway, it worked. It worked for me.
Yeah,
but
time to go, folks. He's got a look in his eye.
I like the very first part of this, Isaiah. Because this is the stuff that kind of makes you get a little confused. And the other thing I was thinking when you were saying that, it's like, I know we're kind of hard on the disciples sometimes, but we got all this in a book.
Mm.
And they say, this is the good stuff, read this and you'll learn some things or whatever. But I mean, they had Jesus, which is better than the book. Well, Jesus is the word, this is the word, whatever, but the living embodiment, right? But still, there wasn't, it's kind of like we've seen the history and we have a written word. Like this was all new to them, I guess, is what I'm saying.
It's
maybe
unfolding before them, yeah.
before their eyes. So when they're going, wait, what?
Well, so are you talking about, you said Isaiah, the first part, you mean like verse 1?
Yeah,
part?
verse 1, all that stuff. It's like once you read this kind of stuff and then you get to the other part and you're like, wow. But what about that? All that was a kind of an amazing vision. And it's like, what does all that mean kind of thing? But
in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up. The train of the robe filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, with 2 he covered his feet, with 2 he flew. And one called to another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost. For I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then one of the seraphim flew to him, having in his hand a burning coal that he had taken with tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips, your guilt is taken away, and your sin atoned for. So what is it that you liked? I mean, because I've got a bunch of stuff I could say.
Well, just the beginning is just the images, right? The Lord sitting upon a throne, high lifted up. That sounds like a song verse, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and then the train of his robe filled the temple. I guess, I mean, here's Isaiah in his vision. So how does he know, I guess, this difference between he's just having a dream and this is, or he's having this vision. And how does he know this is coming from, I guess, coming from God or coming from his own mind? But when you look at this and you see that he's sitting on a throne up high and he has these 2 seraphim over him. And the whole thing about I had notes on all this that I looked up on some of this stuff. And it was like, basically, God's above, the train of his robe fills the temple. That's just a symbol of his royalty and encompassing everything because it filled it all. And then I'm not sure why 2, but then they had the thing about 2 covered his face and two of the wings covered their seraphim's face and 2 covered his feet. And with 2 he flew. And it was that one that had to do with being humble. I think the covering of the face was being humble, and covering of the feet, which is why I wish I had brought my notes, but it also had basically the angel or the seraphim were these amazing creatures, but yet they were still humbled before God by covering their face and covering their feet, as what supposedly, something along those lines is what that meant. And then they're proclaiming him the Lord of hosts, which is, I always, and I don't know if I knew this before and I had just forgotten, but hosts is basically armies.
Yeah, Lord of armies, God of armies, yeah.
So, it's kind of interesting that in this whole thing, that talking about, I mean, they're presenting God as this royal, filling the temple, and then he's the Lord of armies. It's like, so he's like a military type general or something at this point, right? So I don't know. I just thought that was interesting because it's like you read it. At least when I read, I'm going, "This is bizarre."
It is, yeah. And I think it's mainly all of what you're talking about, I think is why he, it's woe is me. I'm lost. Like just this realization of, I don't think it says it in there, but I mean, I picture him just falling on his face immediately,
Mm-hmm.
Um, it's just such a, quote, terrible sight, like a glorious sight, but like a frightening, oh my goodness, I'm undone. I've seen God. I'm not supposed to see God and live. And here I am seeing all of this. Um, it's, and this is what an encounter with God is like. God is supposed to rock your world. Like if you
Right.
just approach God and you're just like, oh well, I don't like when somebody he said this,
He
he said that.
says he's mean, and
He's mean. He talks in these parables, and I don't
said
understand.
tell people what to do,
Tells people what to do. Yeah, and defending a preacher that maybe was off base, but at the same time, people that you're describing earlier, leaving because they didn't like what they heard.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't like that what they heard from the Bible, preached from the Bible, theoretically, was harsh about certain types of behavior.
Mm-hmm.
That, hey guys, you don't get to make the rules.
Right.
This is love. This is, hey, here's what God says. You can't just sit in it and accept it as it is. But yeah, if you think you've had an encounter with God, but all he does is basically affirm everything you already think, then you haven't really had an encounter with God. If he hasn't made you want to just completely hit the floor face down, woe is me, I've got no chance, I'm toast. If you don't have that feeling, then it's not God. At some point, it doesn't mean that's how it should always be every time you like, oh, I'm going to pray for my morning devotions, and then immediately like, boom, like face down on the floor, like every time you get slammed into the dust. I don't know if that's supposed to be every time.
Right.
But because he does build us back up, I did a sermon on this a few weeks back. He breaks us down so that he can build us back up. So the goal is good. The goal is for our best to be brought out. But that doesn't mean he doesn't rip us to shreds at points too, because that's how far we really are from where he intended us to be. And we can't just come lackadaisical, kind of like all familiar and, bossy, like, I don't really like that. I like this better. Sorry about that, God. Sorry, Jesus. I'm going to take this and I'm going to leave that to the side. You don't get to do that. This is God whose the train of his robe fills the temple.
Can you imagine if we walked into the worship center and you kind of knew that this, like God was really, just like this vision was in there with seraphim would you even, I don't know if I'd be brave enough to even go and open the door and peek. I mean, surely would want to, but I think it would be so terrifying in a way, like I guess like how he was feeling.
Well, and today we have this big, I think there's a very anti-fear of the Lord sentiment, right? So we hear that phrase, the fear of the Lord, fear God. It comes fairly repeatedly throughout the Old Testament. It's a fairly common phrase. And I think we resist it instinctively. We're immediately pushing back on it. But I think actually maybe we would do well to have a healthy fear of the Lord. And not just in the sense of respect, which is where we usually go with it, right? I think that is what it is. But, what gets us all worked up? Well, I'm afraid I'm going to lose my job. I'm afraid I won't have the ability to get through this financial situation. I'm afraid of my government. I'm afraid of
Some disease
some
that's
disease
going
yes.
across the country and
I'm
killing them.
afraid of 1,000 different things, right?
You can be afraid of just about anything. Yeah.
And I think the fear of the Lord is a reminder that, well, what Jesus says in Matthew 10:28, don't just fear the one who can kill your body. Fear the one who can destroy both body and soul in hell. Like, we should be more upset, more afraid of disappointing and upsetting the one who has control over temporal existence and eternal existence. We should not be afraid of people who can only do so much to us, right? That, I think, is a healthy fear of the Lord. Wow, I'm really worried about upsetting God because, first off, he loves me. Like, this isn't just about, like, not getting zapped. This is about, oh, man, here's a God who loves me, and he sent his son to die for me. Wow. I should do what he says. I should be more afraid of disappointing him than disappointing my friends or my parents or my congregation or my peers, my colleagues, whatever. Like, no, because that's what drives us. Fear is usually what drives us most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we should be more afraid of upsetting God. We should be more afraid about disappointing him. We should be more afraid about disobeying him and the ultimate end, finding ourselves on the outs when he is returned and getting ready to set up his eternal kingdom. We should be more afraid of losing that than losing anything else, losing our keys, our wallet, our spouse, our parents, our friends, or everything. So, I don't know, that was sort of a random rant. I think there was a tangent point that made sense. I think it was the awe at Isaiah, right? Just sort of like he's walking into this, and
yeah, it's pretty. But you read this, and then you go into, with the more human aspect of it right after that, and I think, well, why is this right at the beginning? I guess it's just to establish his vision as this is really coming from God. He's seeing this amazing vision that just basically, like you said, he just felt completely undone. But then he's willing to say, here I am, send me. I mean,
well, that's the thing. This is what an encounter with God looks like. There's this immense amount of fear because God is so awesome and terrible, so to speak, at the same time. Not terrible in a bad way, but like terrifyingly magnificent.
mm-hmm.
And so you have this, oh my gosh, and face planting on the floor, woe is me, I'm lost, I'm undone. And this confession, I'm unworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Like Wayne's World, right? We're unworthy, we're unworthy. like as soon as they enter the presence of Alice Cooper, right? This greatness. They immediately are fully aware of their lack of greatness, their unworthiness. And that's what happens with Isaiah here. And then what happens? God makes a way for him to be in his presence. There's the seraphim flies over with this burning coal, puts it on his lips. Your sin is taken away. Your sin is atoned for, right? Don't be afraid beyond a healthy reverence for the Lord of heaven and earth, right? Get back up. It's okay. We have a plan for this. And so now Isaiah is up. It doesn't say that he fell face down. That's sort of the way I envision this whole thing. But here he is. He's upright. He's sort of waiting to see what happens. And he gets blessed. He's forgiven. He's given a way to be there in God's presence without the need to absolutely freak out, right? Which is what we have in Christ. We have this, we can boldly approach the throne of grace knowing that in Christ we are forgiven all of our sins, period, done, whatever, so we can approach, okay? But then what happens? Like you said, here am I. So we encounter God, we kind of get the poop scared out of us. we recognize our unworthiness. God takes care of it, but then he sends us on a mission, right? And it's almost like a compulsion, right? Like, oh, here I am, send me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what? How do we get there so fast?
Yeah.
And then the mission sucks. Like, it's just this, so if your mission is not as successful as you'd like to think, that's okay. I did some YouTube shorts on this, I think, at some point. But anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, I didn't want to.
We may have, I think the horse is dead.
I just couldn't let that part go away.
It is so.
I've seen some renderings. I guess they're probably AI or something of like they take the description of some of these seraphim and all this kind of thing, and they try to make an artistic rendering of that, what that would actually kind of look like, and they're just completely bizarre. It's not like we vision it. It's like this person with wings, flying around.
It's like an alien.
Yeah.
Like a crazy looking, which, hey, every time somebody encounters an angel in the Bible, they go, fear not, right? Like the first thing they say to them, fear not. Why? Because they just got scared out of their, what. So I was just, you mentioned like a painting or an image, and
yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, if you do a search on Google Images or maybe one of these AI things, I'm sure they will pull up some very interesting images from.
It's the one with the big eyeball in the middle, and they got all these wings around it and stuff. I'm thinking, what?
Bizarre.
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Bizarre.
It's not these little babies flying around with these little wings.
Nope.
Shooting arrows at you or whatever.
But that's
anyway. Yeah, you said to read from here to here, so I read that and I was like, oh wow, this is, and then it just kind of changes to the whole thing, and then it was really, I know you wanted to focus on the Matthew part of it, but yeah, very cool.
So when you read the word, when you read the parables, Jesus is inviting you into a deeper conversation, always. Meditation, reflection, not just zipping right through it, getting your one verse, and then checking the box on, okay, I did my devotion today. No, sit in it for a little while. And if you don't have things bouncing around in your head like what we're doing here, kind of live before you, kind of letting it all hang out in some ways on purpose, right? So like this is something we should all be able to, we should all wrestle with God's word. There's an example. Just do it. See what he says, see how he unfolds this stuff for you, and yeah. Like, share, subscribe, buy some books. It's good for you. Make Open Arms the most generous congregation in the world. Okay? Open Arms the book, Nobody's Nola, Nola's Icelandic Adventure. Any final thoughts?
That was it. That was my final thoughts.
Well,
would I actually dare open that door and peek in there to see if I knew that was in there?
I don't know. I think that you'd be compelled to. I think that's part, like, there's something about the terrifying nature of it and yet also the draw. Mm-hmm. But you are a super fun guy. I just want you to know that.
Yes, I am. I don't know if you even noticed that.
I did, and I meant to say something when we started, but I didn't. I'm old. I forget things now, and
Yeah, well, it doesn't get better.
Oh, gee, thanks. The ripe old age of, I won't do that to you. All right, y'all. Hey, great to be with you. Hang in there. Sit in God's word. Sit in it. Reflect on it, and see what you can get out of it. Go to him. Ask him. to reveal things to you. Involve your pastor and brothers and sisters in Christ too. I think conversation is really, really important with faithful brothers and sisters in Christ as well. So, but there's a lot in there. A lot in there. You might be somewhat terrified by what you find when you open the door. You may not want to, but there's so much good in there for you. You get like what Isaiah got, the forgiveness right there out of the gates with the, and then you're going to be called to a task. We always are, but it's good. It's good for you. It's good for your neighbor. It's good for the world. So dive in. All right, y'all. Catch you later. See ya.